Well, hello, American Cycling Network. I am here with Tamara again, and we are going to talk about gearing up for century rides. And I'm actually getting ready for one now. But before we get into the content, I always like bragging on Tamara. She's amazing. She's a licensed cycling coach. She with both the USA Cycling Network and United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy. She's coached various athletes at a national level. In addition, she's a triathlon coach, qualifying athletes for world championships. Tamara is also a lifetime competitive athlete. I am going to be blessed in a few weeks, 3 weeks from today. I'm going to get to ride with her. We'll get a lot of footage and we'll edit that footage and get that out to you guys as soon as possible. But she is also heavily involved in virtual cycling as a rider leader with the U.S. military esports. I've actually ridden with them once, and it was amazing. They all dropped me pretty quick. As an athlete, Tamara has done countless century rides in the virtual world at a minimum once per month. And IRL, she has competed in dozens of, including podium finishes at Grand Fondo National Qualifier in Asheville, and she also did a double century in Utah last year at Toja or Toja. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Logan,
Right.
Utah to Jackson, Wyoming.
Logan. Wow, that's amazing.
Mhm.
And make sure you check out our website, ignitesportsperformancecoaching.com. That's ignitesportsperformancecoaching.com. And I'll put that in the subtitle, the description of our video today. So Tamara, I'm training now. Jason and I are training. We're riding with Greg tomorrow. We're going to do about 70 miles. How far in advance should we start training? And we'll just use, because Greg's going to ride with Jason and myself in the Cherahulla Challenge. And I want to tell everybody who's watching that they should really check that ride out because it is epic. It is 115 miles. It is
Yeah.
10,000 feet plus of climbing. How far in advance should we be preparing?
Well, I mean, for a rider in general, it's going to depend on your fitness level. So someone that's brand new to cycling or has done rides of an hour and has never done any, great time in the saddle, they're going to need longer than, someone that has a higher fitness level. So someone that's a beginner would probably need up to 20 weeks to prepare, if not more.
How many
Um,
weeks?
about 20.
Okay.
Yeah, if not more,
Well,
depending.
I'm glad we covered this today. We got, we got to get busy.
Yeah, yeah, you're busy. Someone that's an advanced rider that puts in the mileage, and is fairly fit could maybe get away with, 8 to 12 weeks, but it's very
That
individualized
would
on
be
what
me.
but regardless of fitness level, when you look at the riding that you do on a weekly basis, I mean, for sure, 3 to 5 rides per week. Yeah, even three is a bit low, but people have time constraints.
Okay. And then next question, what kind of weekly mileage should be done to prepare and how many long rides should we complete before that event?
Again, if you're a beginner, you're probably looking at about 80 to 150 miles a week.
Mhm.
Intermediate, maybe 120 to 200. And if you're advanced, 150 to 250 miles per week would
Okay.
be, split up over those 5 days.
Okay.
You have to build up, but I would say about four, you want to have about 4 long rides done before
Mhm.
the event. And when I say long rides, so if you're looking at a century that's 100 miles, you're going to have to make sure that you're used to riding at least 90.
90. Okay. Yeah, that was
Mhm.
a debate that Jason and I had yesterday evening. We were on the phone, and I assumed that you could do 80. And this is just from my running days, but you're saying 90 is best because the
Yeah, I
20
also,
miles could be an hour, right? So you don't want to get that far away from the finish. You want to be like as long as you can do 90, you can cover 10 miles in a half an hour.
Yes, but that said, I myself, as a coach, am also a believer in training for more than what you need to do.
Okay.
So, my
Okay.
clients personally,
Yeah.
if they were training for 100 miles, they would probably bang off a 120-mile ride a couple of times.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. I like that. Yes. Very good. All right. What is the best pacing strategy to avoid burnout during during the ride?
I kind of like the negative split rule. So the first half, just having that good pacing going conservatively, about 5 to 10% under what your max effort would be. And
Okay.
then at the second half of the ride, ramping things up, use your heart rate zones, really avoid zone 4, zone 5 early in the ride. You need to save that for later. Or you're just going to burn out, blow up, and utilize your draft as much as possible.
Okay. Very good. And how should we prepare nutritionally to avoid bonking? It may
Um,
be before or even during or even after the ride.
Sure. So a lot of that depends on what you do prior to the ride. So you want to get those glycogen stores nice and full in the liver and the muscles. So, we discussed this at the nutrition seminar that I did as well. And I
Mhm.
think in a previous video that we did for the channel.
Yeah.
But you want to be eating 2 to 3 hours in advance of the ride.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm still getting over this cold that I was dealing with for 2 weeks. So about 2 to 3 hours prior,
Yeah.
very good carbohydrate rich nutrition that is slow burning, so complex carbohydrates. So,
Okay.
like oatmeal, grits, that kind of thing would be perfect for that. And then you want to have a mixture of solid foods and also very quick absorbing sugars, carbohydrate powders, gels, gummy bears, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I talked a little bit about this off camera, that solid foods you got to kind of be careful with that and test these things out well in advance because when you're putting in a lot of effort, you're doing a hill climb, you're pushing out a lot, your body is sending all that blood to those extremities. And so it's leaving that digestive process alone. So if you're eating, solid foods, they can tend to take a long time to digest, and a lot of people can get GI issues. So you got to be careful with that, kind of test those things out in advance. I do personally like to rely on the carbohydrate powders, and I'm not a fan of gels for myself, but I do have them on board just in case.
Okay.
You want to, your strategy wise, though, while you're in your ride. So if you've eaten 2 to 3 hours prior,
Mhm.
once you get in your ride and you're going probably within about 45 minutes, depending on what your effort's like, 30 to 45 minutes in, you want to be taking in anywhere between, on an hourly basis, 70 to 120 grams of carbs. And you want to kind of be splitting that up every 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, that's good info.
And
What
then
about
post, you asked about post. I'm sorry, I forgot about that one.
yeah,
Post,
afterwards, because I know when I'm 30 minutes from finishing, a lot of times I'll hit another gel because I noticed if I didn't, I crave sugar later in the day. Does that make sense?
well, I mean, yeah, you could.
Mhm.
Your body is craving for you to replenish the lost glycogen is what it's craving.
Okay.
So that for you may come out in the form of sugar.
Mhm.
The gel is going to give you that last kind of push,
Yeah.
but within an hour of finishing, it's really important that you start that repair and recovery process, and that's
Yeah.
going to come from, this is a perfect time to take in like a whey isolate protein shake
Hmm.
and then start fueling your body with, some good complex carbs, rice and sweet potatoes and
Hmm.
pastas and that kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, very good. And then now, how should I taper? The final weeks before the ride. The ride is going to be the first Saturday in June. What's the best way to taper that? And then how do you warm up for it? I mean, do you even warm up for a ride that's 115 miles?
Okay, well, let's talk about tapering
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
So for my clients, I start them about 8 days out. I don't do 2 weeks out, depending. I mean,
Okay.
if they're, high level Ironman type athlete, they'll probably start a little bit earlier than that.
Mhm.
About 8 days out will be the last big effort, last long ride
Okay.
kind of thing. Um, some short intensity type sessions that I will do, very short, like 3x5 tempo or LT
Okay.
type efforts. In terms and no intense rides, like about 3 days out. The
Okay.
day before, we do what's called openers. You and I talked a little bit about
Yep.
that because you're going to do them with me on that Friday. So
Yep.
openers are just like a zone 2 kind of a ride and just
Okay.
hitting like some short, punchy, high wattage type sprints that are no longer than 20, 30 seconds kind of thing. Couple of those. You just want to get the blood flow going and
Mhm.
then get back into zone 1, zone 2, get your stretching and all that kind of stuff done. On the day of, it just depends, a warm up should be about 20 minutes long,
Mhm.
but you want to kind of time that so that you don't have longer than 15 minutes before the event starts. A lot of these events, though, like a century ride and whatnot, they're kind of like a slow rollout. There's so many
Yeah.
riders there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need a warm up. You would kind of just warm up as you're rolling out because there's such a bunch of riders that are bunched up. You've got to be
Mhm.
very careful, when you start out on those. A lot of times, I know a lot of the ones I've been on, the
Mhm.
last one in Greenville, we had an uphill start. That was interesting. So, you don't want to be that person that falls over at the start line.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
So,
It's
yeah, you're going to have an opportunity to do your warming up at a Century Ride as
so
you
you
roll.
warm up for about 20 minutes, then you 15 and be finished 15 minutes before it starts.
Yeah, if you feel that you need a warm up, but
Yeah.
honestly, at most of these, the
Yeah.
whole rollout process is really plenty
Yeah.
of time to
Yeah,
get
it
it
is.
in.
I know what you mean. We
Yeah.
several that I've ridden, they have a guy on a motorcycle escorting you out, and
Yep.
it's not as bad. But boy, it seems that a few of them that we ride, and now we're going to be riding a 80-mile ride 7 days before that Cherahalla Challenge. So we're
Yeah,
going to
that's
be.
fine.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah,
we
you've got
and
enough time.
it's not like a big effort. It's not like we're trying to race or anything. And same thing for the Cherahalla Challenge. We just have a goal of just under 7 hours or right at 7 hours.
Yeah.
And we did it in 7 hours and 5 minutes yesterday. And Jason and I just want to beat our time this year by if we can beat it by 10 minutes and get under 7 hours would be great.
I haven't had a chance to look at that ride yet, but I will.
Oh my goodness, it's 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 epic. All right, so how should I now? So this one includes a lot of hills. There's segments where you climb a lot. The 10,000 foot of elevation gain. Is there a specific way that we should be training because it involves a lot of hills?
Yeah, you could be doing a lot of hill repeats in zone 3, zone 4.
Okay.
Hill repeats are great to
Yeah.
do. Sustained lower cadence kind of intervals that last up to about 30 minutes. When I say lower cadence, doing some standing and sitting kind of stuff,
Okay.
anywhere from 60 to 70.
Okay.
When you get into that super low cadence, you would kind of want to be standing. It's very hard on your knees. Getting some VO2 training in once per week,
Okay.
and resistance training. So squats, lunges, deadlifts,
Okay.
Romanian deadlifts, that kind of
Very
thing.
good. Okay. Very good.
And I'll just, add to the resistance training component. So you've really got to look at what your week looks like in terms of your training. Like you certainly wouldn't want to be doing lower body resistance training the day before you're doing hill repeats or the day before you're doing a VO2 workout. So you kind of got to structure that stuff
Okay.
so that
Space
you've
them
got
out.
some, recovery time in there. Otherwise, you're going to hinder your performance on your bike training.
Okay. And then what are some of the biggest mistakes that first time century riders make and how can they be avoided?
Poor nutrition, inadequate nutrition, hydration, definitely. Poor training, not building up to it, and just, rushing through and not thinking it through or hiring someone to advise them properly or researching it. Poor pacing too. Like I talked about earlier, that negative split, right? So, they blow up in the first half and then they're struggling for the second half. So when you couple that with the poor nutrition and the poor hydration, it's just a recipe for disaster. And then, they're wishing it was over instead of enjoying that
Yes, I
time.
know the first year we did the Cherahalla, I went out too hard and I paid for it on the last major climb. I mean,
Yeah, you will.
it was pretty rough.
You
Uh,
will.
Another question, how should a rider adjust their hydration and nutrition strategy based on the weather? Because I know
Um,
sometimes it's hotter. The first year we did the Cherahalla, it was 93 degrees as a high, and that was the first hot weekend we had. The previous weekend, we were wearing arm warmers and leg warmers. Uh,
yeah.
this last year, it was actually so cold on the mountain that I put my arm warmers back on. So, how do you adjust the nutrition? The hydration? How do you adjust that based on the weather?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying in the hot weather, and especially when it's hot and humid,
Mhm.
you're sweating, right? You're
Yeah.
losing a lot of fluid, you're losing a lot of sodium. So you have to really double down. You have to be drinking a lot more than what you would normally be drinking and taking in a lot more electrolytes than you would normally take in. And
Right.
you also want to keep your food very simple and very much on the lighter side. So I would avoid the solids and just go to the carbohydrate powders, the gummies, the gels
Okay.
idea. In the cold, that prevents a challenge because we just don't feel thirsty. But what's ending up happening is that your body is actually your body is actually needing that fluid just as much. So you really got to focus on getting those fluids in, the hydration in. But the one thing that you have to focus on in the cold is keeping your nutrition up because your body is actually burning more calories to stay warm. And a lot
Wow.
of people don't realize that. So
Hmm.
it's actually super important to actually increase your nutrition when it's in cold weather conditions.
Wow. That's
And
good to
and
know.
and I'll add that you should take in more fats. And the reason being is because those fats slow down the whole digestive process. So, fats like some nuts and that, nuts are probably the easiest, or peanut butter or something like that on your food. And then the other thing that people don't realize is training at elevation. You actually should be increasing your electrolytes because your body actually loses more sodium at altitude.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. Good info. Now, how do we recover? What's the best way to recover after a century ride to avoid injury? Should you take the next day off? Should you spend in a zone two? Or what's the recovery plan?
Um, I personally always take the day off after a century ride.
Hmm.
I do feel that it's the best thing for you. I know a lot of people will argue they just want to spin in zone one. And I'll tell them then maybe you should just go for a walk.
Yeah, okay.
Because the most important thing, like you have to realize that after something like that, like that's really hard on your body, and your
Right.
body is begging for nutrition, it's
And
begging
rest.
for
Yeah.
protein, it's begging to be rehydrated, it's
Hmm.
begging for, prioritizing sleep and rest so that it can repair. So what ends up happening is you rip up all these muscles, you do all of this. And your body is saying, oh, you really hurt me, and I need to repair now to protect myself against you doing that to me again. And so the very first thing is prioritizing that rest
Hmm.
and doing the proper nutrition, the proper hydration, doing things like foam rolling, stretching, all of and compression. So I don't know,
Oh,
I
I've
have
used a lot of compression. Yeah.
so yeah, I actually
Yeah.
have a pair of air boots, and
Uh-huh.
they go the full from toe to hip,
Right.
and they go on a timer, and like doing
Yeah.
something like that post ride is
Yeah.
so helpful.
Well,
So
and the day after the Cherahalla, we're about 3:30 that next morning, 4 a.m. We're driving to Tampa, and
uh,
we'll be in the car about 9 hours. But now I will have compression on. I'll probably be using my TENS unit on, I'm sure, one area. I don't know what area that will be. Depends on what's hurting. But
Now, the worst thing you can do is something like that, right? Like
sit.
is to
Yeah, I
just
know.
not move. That's
Yeah.
really bad. But
So we'll get out, we'll stop along the way because with three daughters, it can be, it can take a little time to get to Tampa, but we will, when we get there, I will go swimming. And I'm assuming that that would be a good way to get some of that lactic acid moving around. Is that correct?
probably not as good as walking, but it's definitely better than just sitting there for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You want it, you've got to keep things moving
We'll
and
probably go for a walk then. I may do that and then also swim.
go for a walk. And then when you're after your walk, or during your walk, take a stop, stretch your quads, that kind of thing. You just really loosen up the hips, do some hip mobility. Like you can do those standing
Yep.
where, you flex at, the knee up to 90 degrees and then
Right.
rotate outward and back
Yes.
inward, that kind of thing. And then continue on with your walk. Those are all really helpful things. But
Okay.
don't neglect the nutrition. Don't neglect the hydration.
Hmm. Well, that's good. Well, thank you so much. We are out of time. I wish we had more time, but everybody, if you like these videos, please like them, subscribe, and share them. But thank you, Tamara, for your time, and look
You.
forward to our next one.
Always, always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much.